that in the future it will be increased further.
Incredible. From our perspective, when we look at Indonesia as a whole, we find that it only represents just under 5% of total banking assets. So for you to be able to, in your portfolio, reach 75% of your conventional is commendable, and congratulations on that. And we are very proud to be part of that journey with you. From our perspective, or from your perspective, how have you, the Indonesian market in general, the banking market, has not been able to penetrate as well. How have you been able to reach and grow your portfolio as fast as you have? Can you share that experience with us?
Firstly, we have to admit the challenges that we faced is the availability of funds or the availability of finance or the availability of the Islamic financing. Because we anticipate we want to grow, however, we realize that the Islamic financing up to date is still lacking.
So we are hoping to get cooperation with ICD to actually increase our motivation in expanding our Sharia portfolio, because frankly speaking, to expand in Indonesia is very potential, because Indonesia is a very potential market for Sharia to be developed.
You on that, on what you were speaking about. Now we understand that the regulators, OJK, has set out rules around having the equivalent of windows or portfolios, separate portfolios, but rather either you must do a subsidiary or a spin-off, or you may choose that you may choose that Islamic finance is not for you and you may surrender your license. So they're indifferent as to what you do, but you cannot continue the way that you are, not just yourselves, but generally the market. So they've taken a decision to either have a true separation. What are your plans? What's PT Mandala's plans?
So, in accordance to the new regulation from the OJK, the Financial Authority Agency, the Sharia unit, if it exceeds more than 50%, then we are obliged to do spin-off or separation, or at the latest, by 5 years after the regulation is issued, which was in 2014. So 5 years after that, the Sharia unit in Indonesia are obliged to do spin-off. And our management is currently discussing to do spin-off for our Sharia unit. And inshallah, there will be a new company, a full Sharia, which is no longer a unit Sharia, but it will be a full Sharia corporation or company. I hope we can achieve that in the near future.
We're running out of time, so I'm going to open the floor up to questions, and I'm going to try and do this differently. Try and come down, because we were told that we're disconnected to the audience. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to ask questions. Anybody have questions? Okay, Sanjeev.
Thank you very much, Nida. Mr. Maruz, I have a question for you. I understand PT Mandala is primarily into motorcycle financing. And what I understand from this market that collecting money and repossessing assets is a challenge when it comes to motorcycle, because it's a vast country and motorcycle can go anywhere. So how do you manage to do that so successfully? Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Terima kasih.
Thank you. It is true, correct, that because two-wheel vehicle financing is retail-like, meaning that the range of value is an average 10 million rupiah, and monthly the installment is 500,000 rupiah. So us, the management of Mandala Finance, we manage collection of debt by coming to the houses of our consumers. But we do not charge the travel cost. By making a visit to their houses, this is also an advantage for us. It enables us to see that the motorcycle is there, and also to ensure that the respective customer is still living in their acclaimed house.
Floor? Okay. You could introduce yourself, sir, and your question, please.
My name is Vince Gowan from Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, handling the marine infrastructure. We have millions of fishermen that need boats to do fishing. Anyone can comment how can they get financing. Number two, Indonesia is developing lots of infrastructure, mainly in the energy sector, that there are about 35,000 megawatts of energy power to be developed, plus another 15 megawatts of power for industry. For the total 50,000 megawatts of energy, how can IDB support the development of infrastructure? Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that question is directed to myself, so I'll try and answer it. From our perspective, we are absolutely committed to developing infrastructure. It's part of our mandate, and we will definitely look at that. It's one of our developmental goals. It's core to our business, and from our perspective, we are committed to do so. As far as your second question is concerned around marine or boat financing, that again is something that we endeavor to do in our member countries, and we would like to increase our portfolio in Indonesia. We'd like to increase the channels that we use, and we call this channel because what we do is we provide line of finance like we do to PT Mandala. We'd like to do it with other banks and other financial institutions and be able to mobilize their distribution ability and use our funding to get to the SMEs, which is the core and the backbone of any economy, and that's our plan. That's ideally what we would like to do, and there's a lot of work we need to do. You can appreciate we used to cover 52, now we cover 54 countries, so we have a lot of work to do. We need all of your help in order to do so, and at this point in time, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'd like to wrap up, but I'd like to wrap up just give you a quick view on my take on these four experiences that we discussed. For Trust Bank, they wanted to be the catalyst for the region. They wanted to be the linkage from an Islamic finance perspective between the Caribbean and the OIC. And the reason why we were a great partner to them and they're a great partner to us is because their SME vision is aligned with ours. And they are also looking at financial inclusion, which is a big mandate of ours. As far as Mara is concerned, again, they spoke about turning things around and even being able to compete in a highly competitive market and be successful. That's the story we'd like to show in every other member country. As far as the Vita Medical Center is concerned, again, we brought developmental impact. We brought the real need of what people needed in their country without having to go abroad. And we'd like to do more of that in all our member countries. And last but not least, for PT Mandala, we would like to use that same story everywhere, in every member country of ours, inshallah. And so with that, I thank you very much, the audience, the panel. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. You've been a great set of panel. And thank you so much. And just like to thank the audience. And Yes, so can I just request a round of applause for my audience, please? And the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There will be a souvenir for appreciation that will be handed over by Ms. Nida Riza to everyone on stage, all the speakers that already share their experience to us here. So this is a very joyful moment for us to be witnessing this special ceremony. Let's give it a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. And then after this, we will welcome them to take a picture together in one frame. And please show the book to the cameraman. Yeah, there you go. It's selfie time. And a group session also after this. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Nida, please stay on the center. Okay, take a group picture, a group picture. There you go. Okay, stand up position. And then give your best smile to the camera. And show it the book to the camera also. Thank you very much. Okay, let's give a round of applause for everyone that already share all the experience. And next, we're moving on to our next panel session entitled Sharing the Experience, Success Stories and Best Practices in Indonesia. So this is very exciting. So your moderator for this session is Mr. Mufti Hassan, Vice Chairman, Permanent Committee for the Middle East and OIC, Banking, Finance, ICT and Trade. And joining Mr. Mufti are Mr. Mansur S. Al-Maiman, Chairman of the Board National Commercial Bank, and also Mr. Diwakar Gupta, Vice President, Private Sector and Co-Financing, Asian Development Bank, Mr. Christopher Herf, President Director, Terios Starch and Sweeteners Indonesia, and last but not least, Mr. L. Bano Rangkuti, CFO, PT Aitra Air Jakarta. Bapak tadi perlu ini, Pak. Silakan. Okay, Mr. Mufti Hassan, you can proceed the session.
How are you?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all in this particular session, and I'm pleased that we still have a good audience up to now. Well, this session is a bit different from the previous one. It's going to be a little bit more interesting, I hope so. And we have here together on stage 4 prominent businessmen, 2 from the banking sector and 2 from the private sector, business sector. Before I proceed, I introduce myself. I'm Mufti Hamka, as announced by the MC, and I will conduct this panel session a little bit different. I'll try to make it as dynamic as it can, so make sure that everybody is lively. But before I proceed, I would like to give an opportunity to the gentlemen on stage, the panelists, to introduce themselves, starting from my left, please.
My name is Christopher Hervey. I'm President Director for Terios Starch and Sweeteners Indonesia. We are the one and only corn refining facility in Indonesia, servicing the food industry with starches, mainly destined to the bihun industry, and glucose syrups.
Yes. My name is Mansour Al-Maiman. I'm the chairman of the NCB, National Commercial Bank of Saudi Arabia. I was the Secretary General of the Public Investment Fund before I joined NCB. Thank you.
I'm Diwakar Gupta. I'm the Vice President in charge of Private Sector Operations and Co-Financing for the Asian Development Bank. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Bano. I'm the CFO of Aitra Air Jakarta. Air in Indonesia means water, so it's not air, it's air. And the business of Aitra Air Jakarta itself is providing clean water to the citizens of Jakarta in the eastern part of Jakarta. Currently, we operate a 9,000 liter per second water treatment facility and cover about 60% of the population within our service coverage area. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I'll start off with Chris. And I understand that you are running a business in Indonesia in a particular industry. I also understand that you all hand in Indonesia. You have a lot of experience in Indonesia. And as the subject of our panel session here is regarding about best practices and experiences, perhaps you would like to give an insight of your experience since day one you arrived in Indonesia and until now with your network in the business sector in Indonesia, as well as perhaps maybe in your daily life as a businessman in Indonesia. Please.
Thank you very much, Papa. We've been talking a lot today about already capital requirements for the industry, about the tremendous potential that Indonesia has in terms of future growth, but also its consumer base. However, there's one aspect that we haven't touched base yet on, and that's one of the key components of setting up a business, be it in Indonesia or elsewhere, but especially in Indonesia. Your shareholders can provide you the capital, technological partners can provide you the factory, but what none of them will provide you is the talent base to grow your business. And starting this business 2 years ago with a very limited amount of staff, our first objective was to identify and hire the talent required to successfully run our business. On a replacement value basis, our factory is roughly $120 million investment, so it's highly capital intensive. Nevertheless, it's a people business. A bit like a Formula One car, it's the driver who will make the difference, and the talent is what will make the difference. Now, if we look at talent in Indonesia, the choice we made was to immediately go towards young talent. We were not looking for people with experience, because there was none of them. We are running the only business of our kind in Indonesia. Therefore, we preferred to hire smart, talented, young, hungry Indonesian talent. Now, as a foreign company, one of the key aspects, of course, is communication. Most of our shareholders don't speak Indonesian. The expertise we were bringing over from Europe were neither speaking Indonesian. Nevertheless, what we found is that most Indonesians growing up in a multilingual environment, speaking Bahasa Indonesia, speaking Bahasa Jawa, Bahasa Sundanese, well, even if they didn't actually master English, you put them in an English-speaking environment for 2 or 3 months, and immediately the words start popping out, and very quickly you have fluid, easy communication with Indonesian youth. On a initiative-taking perspective, we found that Indonesian talent has a very strong authentic thinking process. They think out of the box, especially when it comes to optimizing processes in factories. For having run factories elsewhere, it's very different here, whereby they will constantly try and find a way to make it different. Now, when you're in an innovative sector, finding youth who looks on how to make things different is clearly an asset. So for us, what we seek moving forward is a tremendous opportunity to develop our industry here by expanding, and we are confident on the fact that when expanding in Indonesia, we also have access to this key component that is talent.
Thank you, Chris. Chris here is a typical of an expatriate who's very observant of the local community. I have a question, but I'll ask him later, and of course the floor is open for questions to him. Our next panelist is Mr. Mansoor, who's the chairman of the board of the National Commercial Bank. And I understand that, Mr. Mansoor, you have a short presentation that you'd like to make. And may I remind you that also that we only have 5 minutes for each panelist. I hope you can try to condense it to your presentation within that 5 minutes. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. NCB is the largest bank in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It was established in 1953. An IPO was done in 2014 with market cap of $26.6 billion. Right now, we have 352 branches in the kingdom, 80% of revenue from Islamic products, 4.86 million customers, 70,000 SME customers. NCB is owning 90% of NCB Capital, the largest asset manager in the kingdom. And it also owns 70% of TFKB, Turkey Finance. It's a participation bank in Turkey. As you might see that the performance of NCB has grown 9% to $120 billion in 2015. And also the net income has grown to $2.4 billion in 2015. NCB vision is to become number one by revenue and become number one by profit and become the best digital bank and become best in customer service and become the employer of a choice. Today, NCB is the preeminent bank in Saudi Arabia. As I said, the assets was $120 billion, and the financing was $67 billion, and net operating revenue reached $4.6 billion, and net income $2.42 billion. So it is number one in Saudi Arabia, all banks. NCB is a pioneer in Islamic banking. So first Islamic bank opened in 1990, Islamic banking division formed in 1992, and Islamic product offered through branches in 1990. Converted all branches to Islamic in 2006. First Islamic Global Equity Fund, first personal finance solution based on Tawarruk, first Islamic credit card, first Islamic investment certificate listed in an international exchange in collaboration with Deutsche Bank, the first Islamic securitization of auto receivable. We intend to transfer the bank from 75% asset of Islamic to 90%, and also revenue from 81 to 90%. Saudi Arabia recently presented its vision for 2030, where SME sector is given significant focus. So, SME Authority is Young Entrepreneur Program, fostering international partnership, increasing share of government procurement for SMEs, business-friendly legal and regulatory environment, facilitating across or access to funding, and leveraging electronic commerce to provide access to market distribution channels. NCB is the market leader in SME banking with a 40% share of the total SME banking market and a 50% share of the kafala finance market. NCB covers 14 cities with its SME hubs in the kingdom. So presence in 14 cities across the kingdom, serving 70,000 customers with 3,800 credit relationships. 180 relationship managers serving high-value SME clients, served by 352 branches for transactional requirements. NCB offers a comprehensive product suite to SME clients, Murabaha trade financing for import and export guarantees, Tawarruk working capital financing, Kafala government guaranteed program, for both working capital and capital investment, murabaha and tawarrug option for contingent and direct financing needs, 80% guaranteed by government up to $430,000. NCB performs all underwriting, tawarrug real estate financing solution for ownership purposed for or collateral financing. The transaction banking, merchant points of sales services, electronic banking services, electronic trade services, online mobile banking, employer payroll processing services, access to NCB ATM, contact center, and IVR. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mansour. Very impressive presentation of the bank operations. I'm sure the audience will have a lot of questions for you later. I'd like to invite now Mr. Gupta, THIQAH Gupta. I understand that you're a very experienced banker, and then now you're with the Asian Development Bank. And as we all know, the Asian Development Bank has been established in Indonesia for many, many years. I remember I started working for Bechtel some 40 years ago. The ADB was already here. So perhaps you want to give a little bit of insight on how ADB perceived Indonesia now, and perhaps maybe a little bit of what your expectations are in the future development. Please.
Right, thank you very much.
Can you please put the mic closer?
Is this fine?
Mic closer. The mic.
Is this better? Is this okay?
I'll do it for you. Very close. Very close again.
Oh, that close, okay. So thank you. The Islamic Development Bank itself is doing its 41st anniversary today, so there is really not that much difference between ADB and the Islamic Development Bank. I think both are very experienced institutions, and both are playing a very, very critical role. As we know, 1/3 of the world is in poverty, and both these institutions stand for inclusive growth, environmentally friendly growth, regional integration, getting people out of poverty. So I think that remains the objective of most multilateral development institutions. ADB is also committed to that. And the other thing is that in a world today where the requirements are so huge, I mean, Asia expects $1 trillion flowing into infrastructure every year, and the figure for the world in emerging markets would be twice that amount. Multilateral banks bring additionality only by way of the value add on enabling structures, on evolution of regulation, and on the development aspect. Just the sheer amount of funding is minuscule for all the institutions put together. And I think that has been ADB's focus and core competence over the years. Turning to your exact question on Indonesia, as we have seen across the discussions even today, Indonesia is a very, very important and large economy and country, the 4th largest of Asia, 3rd largest of emerging Asia, the largest of Southeast Asia. The good thing for Indonesia is that 40% of your GDP or more comes still from manufacturing, which is a great thing for a large population where jobs are required. And energy is critical for a development of an economy of this mix. And ADB has been at the forefront of helping Indonesia with its energy needs. So we are very proud to have been associated with the Sarula geothermal project. And we are also intervening on the Rantau Dada project, where there has been a flow of capital and interest even from outside of ADB through the Clean Technology Fund, the Canadian Fund. And that's the additionality that ADB brings to this sector. It's very large in infrastructure. In addition to that, in a globalized world today, we know that integration is very essential. Cross-border, whether it is in terms of project collaborations, whether it is in terms of flow of capital. So ADB is trying its initiatives on ASEAN integration. So there is the ASEAN +3 Bond Market Forum, where ADB has been intervening, and there is the ASEAN Bond Market Initiative, which is for stabilization and giving a swap-based financial safety net to the Southeast Asian region. I think that's for a brief introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are going to be lots of interesting questions for you too, I'm pretty sure. Our last panelist here is Mr. Bano Rangkuti. He operates a very interesting area of business, which is water supply, provision of water. This could be very interesting for our Middle East visitors because water is a very sacred commodity in the Middle East. Perhaps you can give a little bit of experience, insight of how do you perceive this particular industry within your group. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mufti. I'll start this by quoting a few points from the opening speech that was made by the CEO and General Manager of ICD, Pak Khalid Al-Abudi. The 4 points that he mentioned was 1, private sector, 2, infrastructure, 3, lawmakers or regulation, and the 4th one that I'm quoting is in relation to financing. Now, currently, as a player in the water supply sector here in Indonesia, as a private entity, we are currently in the process of trying to connect as much citizens in Jakarta and Indonesia to access clean water. Now, there are 2 issues here that we would like to highlight based on the experiences that we had in Indonesia. Currently, we're operating 1 treatment plant and distribution in Jakarta and another treatment plant in Tangerang, which is just outskirts of Jakarta, connected to Jakarta. Now, in terms of regulation itself, first, the business of private sector water was based on a law that was established in 2004. And that law was revoked by the Constitutional Court in 2015, February 2015. Now, here I would like to also express the seriousness of the government of Indonesia in expanding and focusing in the water sector. What was conducted or what was done was that after the cancellation of the Constitutional Court decision in February 2015, the government issued an economic policy package number 6, which focused, amongst others, in the supply of water and the involvement of the private sector. Now, having that in hand, the investors now in Indonesia, especially for the water sector, are much more secure in terms of the legal standing and in terms of the activities and possibilities in cooperating with the government to expand the water supply system. Now, with this, I believe, and based on our experience itself, a strong legal standing and strong regulations would ease the companies and players to, first of all, invest in the sector, and second of all, be able to achieve or receive financing from third parties. Now, when we talk about the water sector industry, what is basically the concept is trying to connect the citizens of Indonesia to be able to access their basic needs, which is water, through the pipeline. And that's mainly the business that we're conducting right now. Based on certain reports, the current coverage ratio for clean water to the citizen of Indonesia has reached 60%. And that represents more or less the same as in Jakarta. So when we say 60%, about 40% do not have access to clean water. And this is where, 1, the government, and 2, the private sector would like to support the programs in order to be able to connect the citizens of Indonesia to clean water. Now, the government itself has announced a new program in terms of connecting 10 million new connections up till 2019. Now, 10 million new connections is a lot. In Jakarta itself, the total connections total up to 800 100,000 connections. So we're talking about 10 million. So in terms of regulation itself, I believe in Indonesia, at this current point in time, there is a strong will from the government in order to be able to expand the water supply to the citizens. Now, the second point that I would like to draw your attention to is in terms of the financing. And this is very important for investors, including us, including myself. In 2008, our group won a tender to build, operate, and transfer a water supply system in Tangerang with a capacity of 900 liters per second. And bear in mind, this is the first large-scale PPP project in the water sector. So in 2008, we won that, and we started to construct and try to comply with the schedule as fast as possible. Now, as an investor or as a private player, you would assume that the equity that you would put in, or the shareholders would put in, would reach up to 30%, and the remaining 70% are being supported by external parties, being financial institutions, banks, and so forth. Now, being in a position where you were the first PPP project in the water sector, one would, in mind, have an opinion that it would be very easy to finance locally. Unfortunately, that was not the case for us. It was quite difficult at that time in 2008 to obtain financing. One of the reasons was actually from the banks we heard, because this is the first PPP project in water sector, and there's not been any precedent projects that can be used as a benchmark. And number two is that we, as the operators of Jakarta, were good at acquiring existing assets, and this was the first time that we were constructing the project. Now, having that in mind, it was quite difficult for us to obtain financing. Now, it was very lucky for us that our shareholders were able to put in the financing for us, and the project was constructed and commenced right on time. Now, so I see here now that one of the messages that I would like to say is that I see that there is a huge opportunity for IDB here in Indonesia to expand and assist the Indonesian companies and the foreign companies in Indonesia to expand and operate water and provide access to all the citizens in Indonesia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen and audience, we have very limited time, but briefly from what I can see, the four speaker panelists here, you see the two sides of the perspective, from the banker's perspective and from a businessman perspective. We see success stories like from the central bank, from the national bank, commercial bank. But I have one question before I give to the audience, to the Asian Development Bank. Can you just give me in 1 minute, what was the biggest challenge in your project at the Sarula geothermal power plant? As we all know that that's going to be the biggest geothermal power plant in the world. What was the biggest challenge? Just 1 minute, please. Go ahead.
Well, I have not handled the process of the actual approvals. I came very recently. But what I understand is that in a geothermal power plant, the two biggest challenges are assessing the capacity and the durability of the reserves, because eventually the capex for a geothermal plant is about 10 times the capex of a conventional power plant, and you need to have adequate revenue streams, especially on the private sector side, to see that servicing will happen. And the other thing is really about the execution. So execution has its own challenges, which are around procurement, around bidding, and around obviously the competence of the contractors. So I think really those were the two challenges that we had to overcome.
Thank you. Okay, therefore, since the time is limited, I perhaps only have room for one question from the audience. If I can get some help. I can see one hand up there. Please, can you please identify yourself? Can you please give the microphone to the, I guess it was a gentleman there behind.
Thank you. this opportunity.
Thank you.
Young generation deals. And we would like to know about the result itself until now and what you do right now. And of course, what you're expecting from them also about the young generation from Indonesia in your point of view, your business point of view, of course. Thank you very much.
Well, I guess, Chris, you would like to answer that?
Thanks for the question. Well, I think the results speak for themselves. If I take our top 10 management team, the average age is 32, and we have 60% women. So we're very happy with the results. The industry, from a turnaround perspective, has turned into the black from an EBITDA perspective, and that with an overall average age of the company that is around 30. So we're very positive, and we have high expectations on the future growth fueled by this Indonesian youth, as you mentioned.
Thank you. Okay, let me just sum up very quickly, since our time is very limited. From the four speakers here, we can see that there are still opportunities for SME development, as mentioned from National Commercial Bank, where SMEs is one of their prime target areas. But at the same time, the challenges faced by bankers are something which we have to consider in big projects, such as the Sarula project. And I think this is also an opportunity for IDB to look into the experiences faced by ADB in funding such new energy development projects. At the same time also, we have our friend who's developing a water project where Middle East countries have lots of experience in that. And this could be also an experience for Indonesia to propose to the IDB of such projects. And last but not least, of course, the experience of our gentleman here, Chris. He believes that the challenges or the promising factors of doing business in Indonesia is to how to accommodate all this younger generation into developing the economic growth of Indonesia. With these few words, join me in giving a round of applause for this gentleman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there will be a souvenir handover procession. So we would like to welcome also Mr. Mufti Hasan to hand over all the special gift. This is a special book that will be given to all the panelists. This is a very historical moment for us to take part of this special moment. And then after this, we would like to see everyone on stage to take a picture. Pak Mufti silakan berfoto Pak, silakan. Okay? In one frame. Take 2 steps ahead, gentlemen. Okay, there you go. Okay, that's it. Perfect. So give your smile to the camera. Say cheese, maybe. Okay. Thank you very much. Give a round of applause, everyone. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we will have a coffee break of 15 minutes. 15 minutes only. So feel free to visit our booth in the foyer outside and exhibition area. And we reconvene here 15 minutes later after this. Don't go away. Thank you very much. See you later. Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, we will easily adjust the microphone. No worries. That one. Well, it's a bit hard. I think. Why don't you heavy or okay? Kick back. Okay. Very generous of you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have another 2 minutes before the next session is occurred.